The armies begin fighting over Patroclus' body, and desperate to escape, Menelaus and Ajax send a messenger to Achilles to let him know what has happened. Hello and welcome back. Today we are reading the great books of Western civilization, beginning with the Iliad. This is book 17 from the Robert Fagles translation, and as always, I will begin with a short plot summary before diving into analysis and commentary. Menelaus tries to defend Patroclus' body from certain mutilation by the Trojans, but retreats as soon as they threaten to overwhelm and surround him. Hector takes Achilles' armor off of Patroclus and off of the ground, just in time for Menelaus to return with great Ajax. Hector retreats from them at first, but then, when he's insulted for doing so, he turns around and puts on the armor of Achilles before heading into battle once more. Zeus watches with disdain, pitying Hector's ignorance of his own impending doom. He then vows that he will not let Hector return from this battle, but he will give him glory. The fighting goes back and forth, but the Trojans maintain a steady upper hand. Ajax realizes this and suggests to Menelaus that they send a messenger back to Achilles to let him know what has happened, because surely only he can save them. Menelaus doubts that this will be effective, seeing as Achilles has no armor now, but he agrees to send a messenger anyway. The title of this book, in the Robert Fagles translation, is Menelaus' Finest Hour, and it's called this with good reason. Menelaus, together with great Ajax, do a lot, but it's not based off of the glory they win or the people they kill, like greatness is normally considered in the Iliad. Instead, it seems to be about their leadership. When Menelaus retreats, Homer makes it clear that he's not doing so out of selfishness. We've been told, back in Book 7, that Hector would easily kill Menelaus in a duel if it came down to it. Instead of dying pointlessly, Menelaus goes to get the help that he needs to have a better chance at success, and this includes great Ajax, and later it means Idomeneus and little Ajax show up too. The actions and orders given by both Menelaus and Ajax are geared towards cooperation among the soldiers. They have the soldiers form a ring, a shield wall, around Patroclus' body, and Homer tells us that by doing this, they suffered far fewer casualties than the Trojans did. Ajax orders the men not to break formation and not try to win glory for themselves by stepping out of the ring. And yet, Menelaus and Ajax continue to dynamically assess the situation they and the army are in. They don't just statically stay in the shield wall for no other reason than they're safe there. Instead, they go where they're needed and do what is required of them for the army's survival. Automedon, Achilles' driver, calls for help when he's being chased by Hector and Aeneas, who are trying to steal Achilles' chariot. Rather than stay in the shield wall, Menelaus takes Ajax over there to go save him. He's going where he's most needed at any given moment, and that is the virtue of prudence. Finally, when Ajax suggests that a messenger be sent to Achilles, Menelaus obeys and goes to find someone, even though he wants to stay and keep fighting. He's doing what is best for the army, even at the expense of his own opportunities to gain glory. Homer is telling us that this is Menelaus' finest hour, and it's not characterized by the glory he gains or who he slays, but by the orders that he gives, who he defends, and how he leads. It's not the usual type of greatness that we see exalted here in the Iliad, and yet it's a much more familiar and even attainable one for us. Zeus has a few lines where he's speaking to or about Achilles' horses, who are revealed to be immortal. He wonders aloud why he even gave them to King Peleus. A mortal doomed to death, so you could suffer the pains of wretched men? There is nothing alive more agonized than man, of all that breathe and crawl across the earth. What a statement. Hera says something similar in the previous book, when she's trying to convince Zeus to not save Sarpedon. A man? A mere mortal? His doom sealed long ago? You'd set him free from all the pains of death? I've spoken before about how, in this world that we see in the Iliad, glory is one of the only lasting things to strive for. As a mortal, you constantly have to live sacrificing and appeasing the gods, and even then, they might still hurt you. And even if you are immortal, most of the gods misuse that gift for the sake of vanity and selfishness. As good as glory can be, it's reserved for those who can fight, and among them, usually only the best. And even then, it doesn't save you from experiencing misery in this life. Look at Achilles, who's about to gain the greatest glory, but just lost his best friend. Homer's ancient Greek audience understood suffering to be an unavoidable part of human life. And at least so far, we haven't really seen them acknowledge what the consolation is. What is worth living for? What is worth fighting for? There's preserving one's life, rescuing your wife from kidnappers, apparently, dealing out justice, or at least revenge, and winning glory. That's what our characters are fighting for. Is a life full of strivings for those sorts of things worth living? Homer's audience must have thought so, but probably for reasons that we haven't seen yet. And what about us? We don't desire glory these days the way they did back then, but there's wealth and fame, which serves almost the same purpose today. Are those enough to live for? Or is there something else? We'll have to wait to learn what Homer's answer to this is. Hector puts on the armor of Achilles in this chapter. What does that mean? We've spoken at great length, of course, that Hector's slowly becoming more and more like Achilles, taking on more and more of that appearance, but there are lots of little details that make it much more interesting. First, just before he decides to put the armor on, Glaucus berates him for having the glory of a runner. What he means by that is somebody who's retreating. However, Achilles is most often referred to as a swift runner. We haven't heard it in a while, but he's usually called the swift runner Achilles or the swift-footed Achilles, something like that. Glaucus's insult is accidentally genius. It's got some irony to it. Next, Hector sends his own armor back to the city of Troy while he puts on the armor of Achilles. Arbery tells us that it was the custom for you to only do this with an enemy's armor, and one that you've slain at that. So symbolically, Hector is dead, and there is only Achilles left. This could explain why Zeus says what he does. Poor soldier, never a thought of death weighs down your spirit now, yet death is right beside you. Against all rights you ripped the immortal armor off. Great power for the moment I grant you to compensate for all that is to come. Never again will you return from battle, Hector. This quote also reconfirms what we talked about in the last book, which is that Zeus is giving the armor as compensation of glory for his short life. Furthermore, in the next book, Achilles reveals that the armor was a gift to Peleus on his wedding day, on the day of his marriage to Thetis. That's the day that all of this started. When Zeus forced her to marry Peleus in order to preserve his throne, when Eris threw the golden apple into the banquet, causing the judgment of Paris and the Trojan War, this armor is from the beginning of all of this, the event that guaranteed Zeus's rule by making Achilles immortal, a trade of glory for death. Hector puts that on his body. That's why Zeus is saying that death is right beside him. It's also interesting to me that the armor of Achilles is never permitted to be brought inside of Troy. We're told that Hector, wearing the armor, is not going to return to Troy. Not even the armor by itself is brought back to Troy, and 3 times Patroclus tries to enter the city, but Apollo stops him. It's an interesting bit of foreshadowing, actually, because, to my knowledge, Achilles never enters the city of Troy. After the end of the poem, he dies before he can. At the very least, it's some cool symbolism, something to think about. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, and comment below if you learned something new to let me know what it was. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.